So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Turn 5 podcast. Nia has been inundated with coursework, and by inundated, I mean has neglected to complete in a timely manner. So, is now cramming, in her words, a month's worth of work into a week. Chris is AWOL, so I'm just going to assume he's at work at this point, which means it's just me and Ben. But this week, we are joined by another guest. And this week we've got George Sanderson on. So hello, George. How are you?
Hello. Very good, actually. Thank you for having me on. It's great to be here with you two.
Excellent. Would you like to give a rough introduction on who you support, teams, how you got into supporting F1, that sort of jazz?
Yeah, of course. So I've always watched F1 pretty much ever since I was born, I think. And when I first started watching, it was about 2007, 2008, something like that. And I was a huge Felipe Massa fan. Absolutely loved the guy. And then supported him until he retired. And now, well, Charles Leclerc came onto the scene as Felipe left. So it was the perfect transition. And I've kept on supporting Ferrari.
So your second season of watching the sport was like the biggest heartbreak you've been through.
Please don't remind me. I've been told many a time by my mum of crying in my living room when Timo Glock went slow through that final corner. It was painful.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, it's followed by the pure carnage and in hindsight hilarity of the Ferrari mechanic headbutting the garage wall.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah,
I could have picked a slightly smoother ride of supporting the driver. I mean, I see him lose the title on the final corner one year, almost die the next year, and then get told you're slower than your teammate. What was it? It's the year after as well. It's not ideal.
And then just go toe-to-toe with Hamilton for a year, just arguing with each other.
Yeah, he loved a bit of drama.
Yeah,
I think most of the Brazilian drivers do, to be fair.
True.
Did Rubens go through that much drama?
Rubens almost killed Felipe. It was his ring, wasn't it?
That's true. Yeah,
that's strictly national beef, that one. But yeah, so today we are here to talk about the inaugural 2022 Miami Grand Prix, which was actually put on by Formula One themselves rather than paid for by a circuit. So it's interesting to see the differences that has led to, and the ticket prices, because good Lord, took 28 grand for a paddock pass, anyone?
I mean, they literally had like a holiday resort on a corner.
Yeah. I just found it quite funny that they put the fake boats in. Well, they weren't fake boats. They put the real boats in the fake harbour, but you could still sit on the boat and watch the race, which was quite amusing. But yeah, so we'll come to the circuit and all of its quirks, shall we say, in a bit. But first, Ben, what are your general quick summary thoughts of the race?
Off track, absolute carnage. On track, the complete opposite.
George?
Yeah, look in your mirrors, mate. That's about the only action as well.
Yeah. Mine is a combination of the FIA are more bothered by jewelry than they are of Tech Pro. And the fact that Gasly's been watching too many Lance Stroll videos because that left-hand mirror has once again been neglected. So yeah, let's start with qualifying as we usually do here. Obviously, we had Ocon not partaking due to his 51G shunt in FP3 and a cracked chassis. Tech Pro, please. But obviously we didn't get that. So only 4 drivers got knocked out in the first instance. So the 4 that got knocked out in Q1 were Latifi, Albon, Zhou Guanyu, and Magnussen. which was quite surprising to see Haas that far down. They've looked promising at points in the year, but again, I suppose there was a race where they just didn't. It was Saudi Arabia, I think it was, where they just didn't have the same sort of pace. So I guess it was a return to that. Maybe it's something with the track temperature or the types of corners that the circuits have, or maybe it was just not their week. We won't really know. But I mean, apart from Albon only being a 10th faster than Latifi, which up until that point in the weekend, he'd been much faster than, I guess it's almost sort of par for the course, I want to say. Joe
I did
probably
feel
should
bad
get
for
out.
Joe. Yeah, I felt bad for him because his lap towards the end of quali he basically came into a car park, didn't he, on the final couple of corners. So
Yeah.
I felt quite bad for him in that race.
Yeah.
Qualifying even.
It was, looking back at it though, it's like they're all out of the way. And yes, it's very much a distraction to have them there, but I think you just have to send it a bit more. And then if someone does actually like properly get in the way that you have to slam on the brakes, then at least you know they're going to get a penalty for it.
Yeah. Because
nobody got a penalty for that. And I think that's just because he backs out of it earlier than other drivers would have. But I think, that's part of the learning curve of your rookie season of Formula One is send it until someone says otherwise. Then in Q2, we had Mick, Daniel Ricciardo, Seb Vettel, George Russell, and Fernando Alonso out.
It was all of like Vettel, Ricciardo were both. I know Vettel was very disappointed, and Ricciardo had like a slight issue, didn't he?
Yeah, that's what they said. It was a missed downshift. He pulled for the downshift. The computer said no, in a classic British TV reference. So that meant he had to pull for it again once the revs had dropped. So that will have obviously cost him some time.
Yeah, and then Vettel said that he lost a 10th in the chicane or something that would have gotten through.
It was incredibly close.
Yeah.
For sake of clarity, for ease, we'll say that Lance Stroll's time was exactly a 1 minute 30. He was like 0.004 of a second quicker than that. But Alonso was a 30.16. Russell was a 30.173, and Vettel was a 30.214, and then Danny Rick was a 30.310. It's all incredibly close.
To be fair, it's closer than that, I think, because the AlphaTauris, I think, were behind them in the times, I think, end of Q2 anyway.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was even closer than that, wasn't it? So it's like...
Gasly was 10th, that was it. And he was a 30.128.
Jesus. 0.03 something of a second.
So you've got Gasly on a 128, Alonso on a 160, and George on a 173. And that's fighting to get into Q3. That is agonizingly close. I mean, it's not quite 0.004 of a second that Lewis Hamilton had the other week, but for three drivers to be within a 10th of a second, well, even a couple of hundredths of a second, is pretty ludicrous. And then we had the top 10 shootout, which I think was, for the most part, fairly run-of-the-mill in the first runs. But then on the second runs, Max had his mistake, which he admitted was just, his mistake, went wide and across the runoff. So that kind of scuppered his lap. So he started third, top three of, Ferrari, Red Bull. So 2x2 for the front, and then Valtteri Bottas P5.
Super thin.
Out qualifying his ex-teammate. You just know that he absolutely loved doing that. I can just imagine like the car being rolled onto the grid and just parked in front of Lewis's, and he's just like, "See you later."
He's done it a few times this season, though, where he's been right up there at very least, if not ahead of Hamilton.
And it's
been a bit nice.
as much as I want to say, Alfa Romeo have done a fantastic job, I think it's also in part that Mercedes have done such a bad one. But then bottom half of the top 10, Hamilton, Gasly, Norris, Tsunoda, and Stroll. So, I mean, for the rest of the top 10, that's, I guess, pretty much standard. Norris, I think, did quite well to get up into there. I know, like they said, Daniel's disappointed in that, but given how close that section of the midfield is and the way the temperature was going and how I'm trying to make this force into my prediction, I'm surprised he was up there. So yeah, I mean, overall it was a good quali session, I'd say.
I think Lando would have been a bit disappointed still with being P8, because I think he went that little bit quicker in Q2 than he did Q3. So, he'll have been a little bit disappointed, I think, but, like he was probably just happy to be in that top 10.
If it's any consolation to him, his Q2 time would have literally moved him just in front of Gasly, and that was it.
Yeah.
So
literally no difference for him.
No.
Well, in hindsight, he would have liked that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good point. So, oh god. But then, well, that brings us to the race. The pre-race grid walk.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Carnage. But I loved it. It was just funny. I hate how all of the media outlets that aren't associated just with motorsport or Formula One in general are saying it was like embarrassing and awkward. It's just like, have you even watched one of these grid walks before? That's kind of the whole point. He doesn't know who these people really are. They don't know who he is. It's fine.
It's just absolutely I'm surprised he can still get around the grid somewhat. Yeah. The amount of people on it were
that was a very busy grid. I mean, I guess F1 just applied the same logic to VIP grid walk passes as DJ Khaled does to his hit songs. I mean, the fact that he dropped one of those in the interview as well. Hey, look, you got to get used to the levels of humor on this podcast, mate. I'm the eldest, therefore I supply the dad jokes.
I'm more embarrassed with myself for laughing at that. That's what I'm most disappointed about.
That means it's just a solid dad joke, and it worked. But yeah, I mean, I know that he interviewed David Beckham on the grid walk. Yeah. That was just after he'd had a photo with the Red Bull team. But then he watched the race from the McLaren garage. And I'm pretty sure he was doing keepy uppies with Charles Leclerc. So is there any garage that David didn't go in this weekend?
I'm pretty sure he's been to Bahrain before, and he's been in the Red Bull garage.
I mean, yeah, it's just the man goes everywhere. And when asked who was going to win, he said, "We'll see." Fair enough.
I still think the best interview was just with that social media person. I don't know who he is, but he's a social media star. It's a modest too.
I still think the best footage we had came out of Williams this weekend, where they got Francis in the F1 car and Alex to wear his headpiece.
Williams nailed it with the wholesome content, didn't they, this weekend? You get Francois in there, you get content of Alex and Lily hanging out in the garage. They just nailed all the wholesome content.
Yeah,
and got points.
Yeah, got 2 points in the end. He's gonna buy out half the world's supply of hair dye at this rate. Because he said, I'm trying to figure out how much hair dye he's going to need, because he said he dyed it for one race and then it started to fade which wasn't long afterwards. So he's going to need to keep re-dyeing it or go and see a professional stylist to get it properly done.
Just keep re-dyeing it before the race.
Yeah, make sure it's as vibrant as it can be. Next time out in Spain, Alex Albon, P1. He takes off his helmet. It's just like radiant.
Right, so it gets the more points you get. That's the logic.
Maybe he needs to go a couple of shades, lighter to really bring it out. Maybe that's what he's missing.
Maybe like a brighter color than red. Just go like beach blonde.
Well, if you did blonde and then the red would really come out. So you might be onto something in there.
Or blue just for Williams as well.
Well, this is
just
whatever
do
gets some
the
points.
entire rainbow at this point. Like,
Yeah.
just go all out.
Yeah, that'd be one hell of a stance for Pride if you went to that in certain countries.
True.
Yeah, I've already been to Saudi Arabia, sadly.
Yeah, well, we've got Hungary still, and we'll end up in UAE again. So
yeah,
there's still time.
There's chances.
To be fair, who even needs a helmet? Just spray paint the design you would go for into your hair instead.
Just body paint a helmet on. That's a couple of kilos saved, surely.
Might need a pair of
swimming
glasses
goggles.
to keep the wind out your eyes.
Yeah.
The team radio is just like, he's not got his helmet on. His earpiece is still here. How do we tell him to pit?
It'd be like the piece from Top Gear when Jeremy Clarkson was in like the aerial atom.
Yes.
Oh God. I love how we've just gone off on a tangent. We haven't even got to like the first corner. Let's swing it back round. The race. the first lap, the lights dropped after the carnage of the grid walk, and we only had 18 cars on the grid because Aston Martin had super chilled their fuel and was therefore too cold. So they had to take it out, warm it up, and put it back in again, which sucked, I guess, for them, considering Lance would have been in the top 10 to start with, and Seb would have been 12th, somewhere around there, Yeah,
13th.
13th, yeah. So, that's what I found funny about some of the graphics. It's like, oh, he's gained like 7 places. And it's like, well, actually, he's only gained a couple because a load of the people just dropped back. Because most drivers started on mediums, and everyone that started on hards instantly dropped to the back of the field.
Yeah.
Because George went from, 12th to 15th, I think.
Yeah, I think he's down in 16th at one point.
Yeah, so... But admittedly, it did then come to him with the tyres. It was just that warm-up phase. So, I don't know. I feel like it's an interesting one because obviously you're sat on the grid for so long, the tyres are getting cold, but would they be any colder from when you get to the end of the pit lane sort of thing? Because obviously they've been kept in their blankets longer, they're put on at a decent temperature, and then you're sent out, but then they're constantly cooling down. So I'm intrigued to see which way gets up to speed quicker, whether you start on them or whether you pit onto them. But we didn't really get a lot of that because, well, the race was just a bit dead for large sections. We had Max send it around the outside of Carlos in turn 1, which was ballsy.
Oh, so close.
Yeah. I mean, that was great racing from both of them, to be fair. Max to have the confidence to just send it, and Carlos to have the spatial awareness that a couple of other drivers lack to not collect him. But then it was like, lap 9? The Max managed to catch up to Charles and get past him.
Yeah, it's about that.
And then after that, it became very apparent that the Red Bull straight line speed was just that much quicker than Ferrari's.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw the same thing in Saudi Arabia, didn't we? Red Bull went for straight line speed, Ferrari went for cornering speed. And in both cases, straight line speed has been more important.
Yeah, it's where the overtaking gets done.
Yeah.
So that's majority wise way more important.
I mean, we were looking at the speed comparisons, and when Leclerc was in DRS range behind Verstappen, he was only 12 miles an hour faster than him coming down the straight, which sounds, decent. Like, wow, he's 12 miles an hour faster, but he wasn't actually really making that much of a dent into the gap. Whereas Verstappen was gaining a couple of tenths in the same sort of space.
Yeah, like down the back straight to the final corner, it go from like 8-9 tenths down to like 4 or 5. And there'd still be a car length there.
And then you've got the DRS down the start finish straight to close it up even more. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Ferrari have a slight change of tactical approach, I want to say. But if that level of downforce is part of the reason that car is running so well in terms of outright speed over the course of a lap, then would they really want to change that and risk it? Because I don't know the ins and outs of how those mystical side pods work, but maybe they need the level of downforce from the rear wing to work in that accurate way. We won't know until they try, I guess. Next up,
is it Alonso into Gasly? Is that right?
We had a few pit stops, but it just became the DRS trains. We had a lot of slow pit stops as well, actually.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. It was Lando's pit stop was probably about a second and a bit slower than they wanted it to be. And
that was a strange thing because he came out behind. His pit stop was like 3.6, something like that.
Yeah.
And then he came out behind, is it Vettel and Stroll?
Well, yeah. So when he came out, he was sort of like right amongst it. But obviously his tyres are cold. So it's the tyre warm-up phase we're learning, very critical to your race outcome, because if he'd been able to maintain those positions ahead, then he wouldn't have been stuck there for that time and maybe could have pushed away a bit. But he was just caught behind both the Aston Martins and
then Magnussen overtook him.
Yeah.
And then strangely, like Crofty or Martin said, if his pit stop was 2 seconds quicker, he would have been out in front of that. It's like, what pit stop's been 1.6 seconds this year?
Exactly. Yeah, that was a bit of a daft one from Crofty, but I mean, I know where he's coming from, but at the same time, let's get in the realms of actual feasibility. Like, what's the fastest we've had this season? Like a 2.33, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, that's still mighty impressive considering the tyres are a lot heavier than they were. But still, yeah, we're not into the 1.6s.
Did we even get a 1.6 for the old tyres?
No, not even close.
I think the record's like 1.8.
I think the records are 1.82. So yeah, no, definitely not.
Crofty on another world.
Yeah. That's a really quick world. But then the race sort of settled down to a rhythm. There wasn't really a lot going on. We got a lot of shots of the crowd and the sky and Christian Horner on the pit wall.
There's just the one shot of Will.i.am as well, which is halfway through.
Why not?
Will.i.am in a garage.
Why not? Who then spotted the camera and fourth wall broke. But then we had Alonso into the side of Gasly. Yeah, probably a bit audacious from Alonso there.
Yeah.
I think
it's the
Martin...
second bit of contact he'd had that race as well, because he tapped
yes.
Lewis at the start as well.
Yeah.
He had a bit of a dramatic one, Fernando.
I think Martin Brundle's expression of a day late and $1 short would probably be accurate for his move on Gasly. But then obviously Gasly had his something broken, I guess. I don't know. He was trundling round. He ran wide at 2 corners and then pulled back onto the circuit and wiped out Norris. Great. Yeah, not his finest moment, considering he was looking at the wrong side of the car for where Norris hit and where the majority of the track was. Norris said in an interview afterwards, if he was, going slowly and going to retire anyway, then he should have been further over. But if he was continuing to race, then it's a racing incident sort of thing. But given Gasly's incredibly slow speeds and obvious, the messages with his pit crew were pretty obvious. He was going to box anyway. I think that is very much Gasly's fault. And yet we have seen no official communications from the FIA, which irritates me somewhat because I feel like that incident is worthy of a 3-place grid penalty for the next race. Ben?
I know. Probably.
Like you look at other incidents we've had this year. Let's take Alex Albon and Lance Stroll.
Yeah, but
where Lance Stroll didn't look in his mirror, turned in and smashed into Alex Albon and ruined Alex Albon's race.
That shouldn't have been.
And Albon got a 3-place grid penalty.
But if that's the case, then Gasly should get a 10-place grid penalty.
Whoa. Bottas didn't even get a 10th place. And he destroyed the whole grid.
Yeah, I tell you. Don't know whether it's me they're just trying to be like so unbiased that I'm like, nah, Gasly's fine. But like, yeah, probably should.
I'm looking at previous incidents and taking on that. I'm putting aside that I like Norris. I'm putting that into one basket because I like Gasly as well. Don't get me wrong, but if you go off previous incidents, the majority of those ended with a 3-place grid penalty being applied to the next race. So
it depends on what sort of damage he had on the car at that point. If he physically was turning and it didn't turn as much, then I guess there's nothing he really could have done too much. He could have just pulled over
turn more,
I guess, but
turn more.
But yeah,
I looked at the onboard and his steering lock was not that aggressive, shall we say?
And yeah, it probably should have some sort of penalty to it.
I mean, even just for incidents we've had this year, I'd say that would be fair and in line.
Yeah.
Considering that the stewards want to return some faith to the office after questions were raised over various points last year. We're just going to completely brush over Abu Dhabi because that's a whole different kettle of fish. But the whole pushing a driver wide and 2 penalty points and a 5-second time penalty was very questionable at various points. The difference between Austria and France, for example, where Norris got a 5-second penalty in Austria, but Gasly didn't get one in France. So
runoffs.
Yep, runoffs versus gravel differences. But, that shouldn't factor into, because that becomes looking at the outcome of an incident, which the document says it doesn't. So, yeah. We'll save the steward talk for when Chris returns, because we know how much he loves a good steward rant and the documents. God help him. Who enjoys those documents? He puts all of them in the Discord. It's just, oh God.
I keep seeing them and going, oh my God. Just, no, scroll.
Yeah, get past it.
Don't want to read their justification for stuff. Just scroll.
I mean, it's mostly the same stuff anyway. I swear they just have templates that they just copy and paste things into.
Yeah. It'd be all right if it was just like a one sentence of what the actual outcome is.
Yeah. Why does it need to be anything more?
Yeah. So complicated.
Yeah. I love how they had to issue an update because they got one of the forms wrong. I'll see if I've got it here because I downloaded it earlier. Yes, Fernando Alonso correction. This is the sort of document that you really want to see. Short, sweet, succinct, to the point. Done.
Yes, it's easy.
Doesn't say anything more than it needs to. Says we incorrectly stated that he had 3 penalty points for the last 12-month period, but actually he has 5. At end of document. Done. That was all in. So
that's all that's needed.
Why is anything more than that needed for any of the other documents? He crashed. Penalty. Done.
That is saying we've reviewed the footage that we've seen and from article 26.8.
I mean, I can understand. I can understand them putting like whatever article it is just for the sake of the teams then arguing. And the number of penalty points should always be in there. But just like, oh, we reviewed the footage, and just say, okay, look, evidence observed, article broken, penalty points added, done. There you go. Takes 5 minutes. Well, actually, that'll take like 30 seconds to type out.
It'll probably show more authority as well.
Yeah.
But yeah. We've done that. And what?
Job done. Argue it now.
Yeah.
But did you look at this? It says evidence observed. Deal with it. So
we went observing.
Yeah. So obviously after the Norris Gasly incident, the safety car it was a VSC for a very long time. I was surprised by that and slightly actually very irked by it because it was quite obvious it was going to need a full safety car.
It was slightly awkward where Gasly parked at. No, Norris. When Norris stopped, sorry.
I mean, he was right next to a Marshall inlet, but at the same time, at that stage in the race, the drivers were so spread out that there was no gap. Like the whole point of the VSC is that it means that the marshals can get out and back in the space of the gap between the back and the front of the field catching up again. So that was never going to work just because of where the cars were. So why didn't they just throw a safety car?
Well, we've talked about it in, was it Saudi Arabia as well?
Yeah, they've got history of it. So it's interesting. I'm not sure I like the approach of throw a VSC for a bit, slow everyone down. And
happened in Australia as well.
Now, it's kind of like, what's the point? You're just rolling. What is it? Are you asking Siri for a random number between 1 and 10, and that's how many laps it takes you to throw the safety car out? I'm sure Bernd Mailander has seen it on the big screen, and he's just chomping at the bit at the end of the pit lane, like, I'm needed. Now is my time. And then he's just sat there waiting for the race director to say, okay, go. And it's
just like waiting for the stewards to finish playing with the magic 8-ball or something, and they're just asking, should we do a safety car? Shaking it.
It said no again. Shake again.
It said maybe. Ask soon. And it just comes up with an 8. What does it mean? That's when someone replaces the magic 8-ball with just an 8-ball and they get really confused by it. It's not giving me any answers.
It says 8 all the time.
It doesn't even feel like it has liquid in it. But yeah, so obviously then the safety car came out, pit stops were done. Checo was the furthest forward. I don't think Max didn't stop. The top 3 didn't stop, but Checo did. Checo had also had some engine issues. so had lost some time and some power.
He was catching Carlos.
Yeah.
And then his engine went.
Christian said it was a sensor fail. So basically they just turned the sensor off. And that meant that it was okay, but he was still down a little bit of power. I mean, I'd rather be down only a little bit of power than retiring, so progress.
Still another reliability issue for Red Bull, though.
Yes.
Not ideal.
But it's an odd-numbered round, and both of their cars finished, so that's progress.
The only thing is,
we're getting somewhere.
There was still a Red Bull powertrain car that DNF'd. However, it wasn't due to reliability.
No, it was due to a lack of observation in his left-hand mirror. Yeah. That can't be pinned on the actual engine. So I guess good progress, because it was a very hot race, and if your engine's going to pack up, I feel like it's going to pack up at a hot race. So to have the 3 surviving Red Bull powertrain cars make it to the end, I want to say they all made it in the points. I think they made it in the points. Final race classification. Oh no, Tsunoda was 12th.
Yeah.
He was not quite quick enough to make the most of Alonso's penalties. But still, a 1-4 for Red Bull at a very hot track. Not bad. I mean, not bad. It's kind of what we expect of them, really, isn't it? But yeah, after the safety car, it was very close between Max and Charles. Actually, it looked like Charles had the pace to try and get Max, and then the Monaco TV director was consulted, and every time it looked like there was going to be a move, there was crowd shots. Wow! Oh my god! Look at this! And it's just like, no, stop it.
He kept on bouncing over that chicane curve as well, didn't he? Each time he got close to him, he just then took a bit too much of the curve. Made my heart go in my mouth, thinking there's a wall there, Charles.
Imola flashbacks.
Yeah. And he always lost like a couple of attempts on doing that, and then it just was never close enough again.
Yeah, actually, that's a point. That means my meme of Charles Leclerc lines is valid again. Would you like to see my highly definitely not finger painted on my phone meme? Charles Leclerc lines.
Oh my God. Leave poor Charles alone.
Look, when he stops taking too much curb and stops launching the car, I will stop making Charles Leclerc line memes. Oh God.
Poor guy.
Hey, look, he brought it on himself. But obviously then, I think one of those times that he took the curb was a bit too much and cost him time on going onto that long straight more than anything. Especially combined with the fact that the Ferrari just didn't have the straight line speed it needed. Maybe they would have done better if they'd had the old cars and there was more of a hole in the air that the Ferrari could have tucked into. Because this year we're hearing less of the slipstream effect, and yeah. So who knows? Basically, who knows? We'll never see a race with the old cars around Miami, and that will probably be a good thing because those were massive.
Probably got stuck between the chicane, between the two little sausage parts of it. Just got wedged in that gap.
Beached. And then obviously we had Mick and Seb fighting. Family feud. Seb got past Mick. Mick was not having much of it and tried a hefty old dive bomb into turn one, and adios. Seb went goodbye. Mick went goodbye a little bit later on. Still made it round to the pits and pitted and came back out again. Seb made it round to the pits and just said, "That's enough." And having seen the state of the side of his car on Ted's notebook, I don't blame him. So
it's a pretty hefty hit.
Yeah, there was a nice hole punched in the side pod. So not quite the same sort of style of hole as Alonso's side pod was in Imola, because that just disintegrated, whereas this one had impacted but then sort of half rebounded to almost fill the hole, but you could quite clearly see where there was a wheel. But that led us to, wait, what lap did that happen on? Bottas got a bit late on the brakes and sent it too deep into a corner and tapped the wall. And that cost him 2 positions to 2 Mercedes. That's got a sting, but still finished P7. So that was quite good. More points for Alfa Romeo. After the disappointment of Zhou retiring on lap 7, which we didn't even talk about. There was a problem with the car.
Actually, see what happened to Joe in that one.
He just had
just mechanical.
Overheating issue. So they just retired the car to save the parts.
Not the best weekend.
Yeah,
no
start as well.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but these things happen. It's probably going to happen to, I'd say, at least half the grid at some stage over the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already seen it with the Red Bull guys. We've seen it with McLaren and their overheating issues. So it's just part and parcel, or part of the game, you pick. But, it comes hand in hand with the sport. There's going to be gremlins. You're not going to finish every race you're in.
To be fair, I think Zhou's done a lot better than most were expecting him to so far.
Definitely.
I think people were expecting not another Mazepin maybe, because I think everyone knew straight away this guy.
He's one of a kind.
Yeah. Why is he here? But Zhou, I think they were expecting another Latifi or someone like that. But he's done decent so far. I'm not just saying that because he moved to Sheffield to learn karting and I'm from Sheffield and I'm a massive fanboy because of it. Totally not the reason. But no, he has genuinely done pretty decent.
I completely agree. I mean, you look at Alex Albon's performances and you compare those to Nicholas Latifi, and you start to question, well, if Williams say they no longer require pay drivers, why is Latifi still in that seat, and how long is he going to stay in that seat?
He provides a lot of Nutella, is what it is. They're partial to the Nutella.
They got that discount.
Yeah.
He's bought in bulk from Costco's. He's got that membership card.
I know, while you compare teammates, they obviously compare Zhou to Bottas, and Bottas has absolutely wiped the floor with him so far. But people have to remember, this is Valtteri Bottas. He went, I wouldn't say toe to toe with Hamilton, but there were times where he was quicker than Hamilton.
I mean, if you look at raw 1 lap pace, and he has outqualified Lewis Hamilton, and that is an achievement, even just to do it once. And he did it on plenty of occasions.
I can't remember which season it was while he was still at Mercedes, but there was one where he retired at Baku because of a puncture, on the last couple of laps. And I think if he'd done that, he still would have been leading the title by quite a way or something that season. He is a very good driver, Bottas. So for Zhou, I think as long as he doesn't do a Latifi and is absolutely shocking, it's only going to help him having Bottas there, because he'll teach him over the season. And Tsunoda wasn't great last season. He looks good this season.
Yeah,
that might happen with Zhou.
The team dynamic in Alfa Romeo is very much that of master and apprentice, but I think they've done, Fred Vasseur has done a very good job bringing in Bottas and saying, look, this is now going to be pretty much your team. And I think, Bottas has said that he's enjoying it. He likes that responsibility, which kind of throws it back of shade back at Mercedes. And it's this is what you could have had if you'd listened to me.
There's so many little moments like that you just go, Mercedes were idiots.
Yeah.
Or like so many little moments that Shady's had where, we saw it when he was trying to do strategy last season and you were going, just listen to him, because every single time he suggested something, it would have worked pretty much.
The real one that, I mean, it was broadcast over the race was France.
Yeah.
Why does no one listen to me when I tell you it's a two-stop?
That was quite a painful one to listen to, I think, as well, because you could tell how just genuinely frustrated he was in that. He sounded like just hurt.
Yeah, and he was proper on it as well. It was definitely the way to go.
Yeah, Bottas, there was one that I noticed, I can't remember what race it was, where he did the coffee video again. Where Mercedes, he made the mistake, and then at this one, he sort of corrected it. I was like, it's not really shade at Mercedes, but at the same time, it's directly going back to his times at Mercedes and improving on it.
Yeah,
it's like
he was. I think the people who would have been most sad to see Bottas go would have been the Mercedes TikTok admins, because he was just all over that, and now Alfa Romeo are like, he's ours now.
To be honest, Hamilton's probably missing him a lot at the moment as well, because George is kicking his ass through most of the races.
He's still the only driver with a P5 finish in every race.
Absolute joke.
So
like he started somewhere outside the top 10.
He started 12th this race
again in Miami.
Yeah, I know this race didn't really help Hamilton with the strategy and safety car and everything, but still, over this season, we've seen it a lot of times. Hamilton, Saudi Arabia, Hamilton was just stuck, couldn't do anything. He's like
Valtteri last year.
Yeah,
and it's like him not go through the grid.
Yeah, it's
maybe he was just having flashbacks to Imola, and all he could see was the back of Gasly's car, and that's why he couldn't overtake anyone.
Maybe that'll be his replacement when he goes, if he goes this year. Wouldn't mind seeing that.
I'd like to see that. I've already got that Photoshop done, so that's an easy job for me.
In a Haas or something like that.
Hamilton
just go to a back marker. Yeah. Just go to a back
marker.
You
call it Haas a back marker? No. I won't have that slander.
Haas of last year.
Okay, there we go.
Be like Aston Martin next year.
The absolute boat.
Yeah. Just being the boat of the whole grid.
So Latifi's Williams this year.
Yeah. It'd just be like Hamilton bingo next year. It'd be incredible.
I'd absolutely love that. I'd relish every time I got to ask Chris, and what lap will he be lapped on?
I mean, I don't hate Hamilton, but I was a Felipe fan. So at the same time, I'm loving every second of this season where it's just not working for Hamilton.
I think there's the same thing for me will happen. Well, actually, I don't know. I didn't like Seb in 2010 to 2013.
I don't think many people did when he was at Red Bull.
Yeah, it's just when
he was very arrogant and he was dominating the whole sport, and I just didn't enjoy it. So I didn't like him. But now everyone's a Seb fan.
Yeah, it's like very much the thing of whenever something's just like over dominant, it's sort of like it's boring.
It's like in football, Man City. Nobody wants to see them win the Champions League.
No one likes them.
Exactly. It's because they spend all that money and they think they're all this, and they still can't win the one trophy that every year they say is their target. So, but then once Seb left Red Bull and went to Ferrari, and yes, he was still, a bit flamboyant and a bit extra and all this, that, and the other, but it wasn't in the same way, and it was much, I want to say, like more banterous than cocky.
Christian Horner effect, I reckon.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe because maybe it's just a Red Bull ethos, a Red Bull number one driver ethos, where you have such faith put into you that you have that cockiness. Like, don't get me wrong,
drinking too much Red Bull.
Yeah, probably that could be it. Caffeine
just
rush.
Getting into the blood too much.
What do you mean getting into the blood? It was his blood.
That's true. Everyone loves Seb now. His protest this weekend was hilarious. Just sticking his pants over the top of the race suit. Yeah. Super Seb. That's what.
And as much as I don't like Hamilton, his protest this weekend was equally as good.
Yeah.
The ban on jewelry, I'll wear 8 rings, 4 necklaces, 3 watches. Come at me.
Yeah. It's a stupid ban, though.
Yeah.
If we're being honest, like, they've got that much protection on, it can't be for a safety reason. Because I was like, if a fire-resistant suit or whatever they've got, and a helmet and the gloves and just everything like that, if all of that is not going to stop a little metal chain around his neck or something from whatever getting hot.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I was talking to someone at work about this, and it's like, do they honestly believe that the drivers are going to get into the car with all of this jewelry on when they're trying to save as much weight as possible?
All they'd have is like one chain at most, isn't it? Or one earring, and it'll probably have some sort of special meaning to them.
Yeah.
Or and it's some like superstition or something like that. Like,
the FIA are clamoring on about safety, and yet they didn't put a tech pro barrier at a corner where 2 drivers had massive incidents. So it's...
and then they did the other extreme with the DRS at Imola and just decided, it's dry, but we don't want it.
Yeah, it's just not... They're not sending a consistent message, and it's looking... They're either looking overcautious or completely hypocritical, which is not... Neither of them is a great look for the sport when it's supposed to be about, racing on the edge. So, yeah. Should we wrap up the race with final standings? So, Max
Anytime
podium.
We can say Leclerc is on top. I like it.
So we had Max, Leclerc, Sainz as your top 3. Point scorers from there down: 4th, Perez, then Russell, Hamilton, Bottas, Ocon, Albon, and Stroll. That is after all of the penalties have been applied, because Fernando Alonso got 2 separate penalties. So, yeah, he got a 5-second penalty for his collision with Gasly, and also got a penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage because he cut the chicane. Classic F1 game, lovely that. So yeah, he got dumped out of the points. Alex Albon got promoted from originally 10th to 9th, so his one red hair point became 2. But yeah, other than that, Kevin Magnussen also had a 5-second penalty for causing a collision, but that dumped him from out of the points to further out of the points. So no real major issues there. Then we had the interesting journey to the cool-down room. It was just Max that was on the back of that, wasn't it? Like,
I think so.
Why did the Ferrari boys just get a free pass? Because they were just sat there talking, and Carlos was like chugging water like there was no tomorrow because his drink hadn't worked, which I couldn't imagine trying to do something like that with no water. And then finally Max joins them, and we got another cool down room, which we love to see.
You needed it.
Carlos dropping the F-bomb on live TV. So, I mean, it's a great insight into things, because the drivers just ask each other questions that they just give honest answers to, because at that point, well, they don't care. The race is done now. So, and then we had the interesting Pirelli caps.
Just what was that?
I mean, I get it. You're at an NFL stadium, so helmets, but at the same time,
they took them off as soon as they got.
I know. Well, I mean, you're supposed to.
Well, I'm done with this now.
You're supposed to take your hat off for the national anthem. So, I'm disappointed that nobody headbutted each other before they sprayed the champagne. They do it all the time in American football celebrations. Where's
Just
the
embracing the
headbutt?
culture more.
You know,
You just see like Verstappen headbutt Leclerc. Leclerc's just out cold on the floor. And I'm like, shit.
It's been drowned with champagne.
Yeah.
That's when like the sensor goes off and the medical team come up. It's like he's suffered a significant G impact. We've got to take him to the medical center. But still, I mean, come on. Whenever there was a time to headbutt someone on the podium, that was the time. Because I'm disappointed.
It would have gone with the whole bit of fun sort of vibe that came
Yeah.
with the helmets and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a full sit down headbutt.
Headbutt whoever gives them the trophy. Yeah! I'm kind of disappointed that the constructors trophy night didn't get one either. It's just like he's left out now. You can't have like a team headbutt. So yeah, that was I liked it in a way. It was kind of playful, but at the same time it was a little bit cringe.
Yeah.
I think if they'd headbutted, it would have solidified it as like a great moment for me. But without it, it was just kind of meh. And I saw, I'm going to go off on a minor tangent here. I saw a comment online and someone suggested if you're going to have a racetrack that goes with the Hard Rock Stadium, have a racetrack that goes through the Hard Rock Stadium. Because imagine how cool that would be. Just sell out the stadium. That's like 60,000 seats. Job's good.
To be fair, it's probably big enough as well. Like there'd be two entrance and exit you could make somewhere. Surely it'd be wide enough.
Yeah. As long as you have like, I mean, looking at sections.
Definitely be wide enough.
Looking at sections of it, like, you know, the like sections of the track that we've got currently, that chicane leading under the highway. That's really narrow. That
just caused a pain in the ass of the cameraman. I think that over the weekend, so try to see them going through that section. And if every time they go, oh, there's a road there, and there's a road there as well. It's really
like,
awkward.
If they can fit the F1 cars through there, why can't they fit them through the stadium? So I want to see.
They do it in Mexico as well.
Exactly.
Literally through. I know that's baseball stadium is a bit more open than perhaps the Hard Rock is, but surely it's still big enough to do it like that.
I'm gonna
you'd hope.
Google Maps it now. I mean, they drove through it with the motorbikes and the police escorts, so there's at least somewhere.
Yeah, I know it's a different motorsport, but Formula E had that one that went through wherever it was in London. That arena, went through inside. I mean, admittedly, it did make it look like a bit of a go-kart track, but they still went inside with it, didn't they? So,
yeah, I feel like that. I feel like that one was made to look more like a go-kart track because the XL has a roof on it. Whereas the Hard Rock doesn't, so it still would have had, the bright sunshine on it.
Yeah, it would have been very cool to do that and go through the stadium.
So if you see it next year, it was definitely because our podcast is so influential.
Totally.
Jean-Todt. he will hook us up. Right. With everything said, let's go over our predictions from last week.
So I can laugh at you both.
Yeah. Ben, I'm going to give you an honorary point for your bold prediction.
Oh
God,
because you can't even remember what it was.
You said Gasly would get a 5-second penalty for causing a collision.
Oh,
that's pretty good.
We said, I remember just being on about Gasly causing a collision, so I'm like, yeah, that's going to be my bold prediction. We're on about it too much. It's just going to happen.
So I'm going to give you an honorary point for that. Just because I think it should have been, but because he retired, that 5 seconds would turn into 3 grid places. Chris's was a red flag. That didn't happen. Nia said both Williams would be in the points. That didn't happen. I said a car will sink in the fake harbour. We had someone stop on the blue stuff in practice.
There was also an F1 car in water, just randomly.
But it didn't sink, so sad noses. And Reese said both Haas cars would be in Q3 and in the points, which was no. No. In terms of the podium predictions, last place, Ben, with 2 points. You got points for putting Leclerc and Verstappen on the podium, but not in the right places.
That's a genius, me.
Chris was next with 3 points because he said Leclerc would get pole, and he put Leclerc and Sainz on the podium, but neither of them in the right place. Then it was Nia with 4 points, who put Sainz in third, so she got 3 points for that, and Leclerc on the podium as well. And then joint first this week was myself and Sonia, both on 6 points. I said Leclerc would get pole, and the podium would be Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz. Sonia said Verstappen would get pole, and the podium would be Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez. So 6 points apiece there. Oh, actually, no, Ben, you weren't last. Reese was last.
Oh.
Reese got 1 point for saying that Leclerc would finish on the podium. And that was it. No Perez and no Hamilton, sadly. However, everyone in our little league has been completely blown out of the water by the Discord crew. In third place was Mason with 4 points for correctly guessing that Leclerc would finish second and putting Verstappen on the podium. In second place was Wev, who said Leclerc would get pole and correctly guessing that Verstappen and Leclerc would finish 1-2. And then in first place is Tay, who got the entire correct podium, but not pole position. So got 15 points. So yeah, we've been absolutely shown up there. So we're going to move swiftly on with that and go to our lap down showdown predictions. It was kind of, I guess, a 3-way tie this week. So the first driver to be lapped was Nicholas Latifi. He got lapped on lap 35, and he finished 0 laps down thanks to the safety car. So everybody got the amount of laps down he'd finished wrong because everyone either said 2 or a DNF. I was the closest with the amount of laps by saying 28. Everyone else said less than that. And Ben and Reese both said that Latifi would be the driver to be lapped. So myself, Reese, and Ben, sort of a 3-way tie there. Yeah. But yeah, we've now got a week gap in the order. So there's no predictions yet. We'll chuck out a tweet and a post in the Discord, etc., when race week starts. To get your Spanish Grand Prix predictions in. Next week, we will be covering the opening 2 races of W Series from Miami, as well as making our predictions. And probably any other news. Hopefully we'll hear more from the F1 games by that point, because that seems to be ramping up now. I personally just want to hear more about the F1 manager game, because they came out like, here, wishlist us first, and we haven't heard anything since. So I want more details. But with all that said, we hope you join us next week. Thank you for listening and or watching, and we will see you to discuss W Series. Goodbye.